Hey, welcome everyone. Good afternoon if you're on the West Coast, and good evening on the East Coast, and good morning in Australia. And for those of you in Europe, thank you for staying so late up to join us. I'm Julia Hook, but you can call me Juju. All my good friends do. And I'm so excited that you're here. And I want to start out by saying that what I offer through my business is a very transparent and authentic approach to branding. And in light of that, I want to offer a really authentic approach to this webinar. So I'm going to take just a second here to tell you exactly what's going to happen over the next hour. So for about 40 to 45 minutes, I'm going to deliver the exact free goods the webinar title promised. I'm going to show you how you can make your brand entirely unforgettable. And I'll show you how real brands developed by small businesses do this through what are called touch points. And then as an overachiever who values recognition, I'm going to give you a bonus download at the end of this webinar if you stay with me all the way through to the final goodbye. So I'll give you a link to a download with 25 ideas for creating free touch points for your brand. And these are things you can do to wow your customers with zero or very, very little cash investment. And I hope that sounds fair. There's no tricks, no gimmicks, just straight up free content and some permission marketing at the end. So I want to talk about an aspect of branding that tons of companies, and I'm talking about the big boys here too, absolutely forget or overlook. You see, agencies and marketers get worked up and involved in creating the front of a brand. They get mired in what the brand looks like or how it's positioned. And don't get me wrong, those things are really, really important. But an unforgettable brand is created somewhere else. A great brand is about more than logos and colors and fonts. A great brand is about the way you make people feel. And that should be some good juju, man. You know, an unforgettable brand is created when you touch people, and we aptly call these moments touch points, and that's what I'm going to talk about this evening. A touch point is any point where a prospect or a customer comes in touch with your brand. So I want to give you some examples of touch points. Your website is a touch point. When you answer the phone, that's a touch point. When someone walks in your front lobby, that's a touch point too. Every social media post that you make, touch points. When you send out an email, touch point. When you give a return or a refund, that's a touch point. If you give instructions on how to use your product or your program, those are touch points too. And every time you say thank you or we're sorry or bye now, those are all touch points. Really great brands, whether they're large or small, take time to engineer touch points to build real loyalty. Great brands create moments when customers are so delighted by the brand interaction, so intrigued, so impressed that they become fans. They create moments that people remember and that people talk about. And these moments, they become the legend of a brand. These moments are the moments that take a brand to an entirely new level. Now, before I get too deeply into this, I want to invite you to get into a creative space, an open space where your own business is concerned. And if you have a notebook, I'd like you to write your ideas down throughout this webinar and really let the ideas flow. And as I share, I encourage you to share as well in the chat box. Feel free to write at any time and, share with your peers here and share with me. For right now, in this moment, I want you to think whether or not there are touch points in your own business that really jump out at you immediately. Are there touch points that you can see, that you can imagine, but you feel you've completely missed out on maximizing them? Are there touch points that you think you can make a wow experience for your customers? And if you can't, don't worry about it. Don't sweat it. Just get your thoughts down and we'll move on to making a difference here together. You're in the right place, and I'm going to teach you how to do this. So here's the thing about touch points. Touch points are an extension of something that exists inside a brand. And great brands are multi-layered. They're much deeper and more strategic and well-developed than consumers see on the outside. At the core of the brand that seems simply genius is a ton of planning. I promise you that. and a ton of clarity on the part of the business that develops it. Just because it looks simple doesn't mean that it is simple. Touch points, well, they bring these aspects of a great brand to life. In the touch point, the brand lives and breathes. And these are the points where the brand has an opportunity to really change the world. So I want to talk about the aspects of a great brand before we move on. And I know this is a lot of information. It can be overwhelming, especially if you've never really seen branding in this way. But stay with me. I promise you that things are going to become clear. So first of all, a great brand has an image. And this is its identity. This is the aspect most businesses create, and then they just stop. The image is about a color palette and a logo. It's about icons and pictures and visual standards. And the image is usually something that a designer creates. And like I said, this is what most people consider to be branding. But a well-developed brand also takes a position. It differentiates itself from every other business in the market, and it makes a proposition, a promise to its customers. And the customers understand and know that promise, even if they only know it subconsciously. And a great brand also has a very deliberate price strategy when compared to other businesses in the market. Now, a really great brand also understands its philosophy. Their leaders or business owners know their higher purpose, their why they're in business and why the brand exists, and they understand the brand's core values, and they have a long-term vision for the business and for the brand, for what the world will look like when the brand's promises all come into fruition. But for a brand to be truly effective, it also needs clear messaging. And I'll show you this in play in a few moments. I like to say that a great brand has its story straight. And there are stories for products and services and for the business itself. So here's a part that's really the most fun in branding, and so many companies leave this out. A brand also has a personality. It has character attributes and personality attributes, just like a person. It has voice and tone and a way of behaving, because people don't connect with businesses, they connect with ideals. And this personality, it communicates the ideals in a way that people can get behind them and latch onto them. And last, a great brand knows its audience. It understands what I call customer archetypes and customer characters. A business owner with a super strong brand knows the desires and goals and fears and frustrations of her audience. And the brand responds to those. The brand addresses those things. Now, here's the part that everyone but the true greats really miss, even the biggest of the big. After a company nails all those aspects of a brand, the brand has to live and breathe. The brand still has to touch people. And if this doesn't happen, then a brand is just something on paper. It's just an idea. It's a paper doll. It lives in a boardroom or on a website. It never makes it into the hearts and minds of the consumer. And it's this touch, this most important aspect that I want you to come to understand during this session. Because when a brand touches people, it turns prospects into customers, and it turns customers into fans. Now, that sounds like heavy stuff, I know, but I promise you it's nothing you can't handle. It can flow effortlessly for you and for your brand. In fact, it's a ton of fun. And I want to stop right now and take a breath and have you take a breath. And I want you to think about a few things, aside from the fact that the office next door to me has its alarm going off right now. And I want you to write these things in your notebook or share them in the chat. Is there a particular way that you want your customers to feel? Is there something about your brand, some unsung beauty in your business or in your product that you want people to know about? And is there something so unique about your business that you're not communicating and you wish you knew how to communicate it? Well, this is how touch points come into play. Touch points are the answer to all of those questions. So to demonstrate, I'm going to share with you my all-time favorite real-life touch points. Now, some of these are more expensive and some of them are absolutely free. You should know that you only have to have a few touch points to make an impact. If you can just touch someone 2 or 3 times even in a way that's genuine and significant, in a way that makes a person feel absolutely special, I promise you'll earn a fan for life. And these touch points are from normal businesses, the kind you find in your own neighborhood. In fact, they're from my neighborhood, and they're likely the kind of business that you're running right now. So I want to start with what you might consider an unlikely business for building wonderful, touchy-feely moments. It's an orthodontist, and it's called Hulse Orthodontics. And this is Cameron Hulse. So Cameron Hulse is my son's orthodontist. He's in Carlsbad, California. And here's the amazing thing about Hulse Orthodontics. My son can't wait to go there. He loves Cameron Hulse, and never in the entire 26 months that he had braces did he say, "Oh, Mom, please don't make me go there. That place is terrible." Now, here's why this is amazing. Because this is what Christian experienced in his first real visit at Dr. Hulse's office. And if you've never had braces, and I never have, this is absolutely shocking. I mean, how horrible does this look? You can see in his eyes that he's just blown away by what's happening here. Now, in addition to the initial installation of these braces, Christian also had issues with his jaw and with his palate, and his teeth didn't line up properly from top to bottom. And had we not fixed it, he would have experienced difficulty chewing as an adult. So in addition to the braces, he had to have this bar put across the roof of his mouth to widen his palate. And every night we had to put a wrench in this bar and crank it to spread his teeth apart. It was like some kind of ancient torture instrument. And then later in the process, for 6 months, Christian had metal devices installed from his top jaw to his bottom jaw to pull his bottom jaw forward. And for 6 months, he couldn't open his mouth completely. This poor kid couldn't bite into a burger. And so I ask you, knowing all of that, can you imagine why Christian wanted to see Dr. Hulse? Can you imagine why he never had a moment of bad feelings toward this guy or toward his business? Because of touch points. These touch points were very, very carefully crafted based on an aspect of the Hulse brand that Cameron Hulse knows very, very well. Cameron Hulse knows his audience. He knows their goals, their desires, their fears, and their frustrations. He knows the patients, and he knows their parents. He knows everything there is to know about his customer base. And he builds his touch points based on that. So how does he provide reassurance for these kids? How does he tell these kids that he knows them? Well, these things may sound silly to you, but they're not. Dr. Hulse wears skinny ties and Converse All-Star tennis shoes. Not only does Dr. Hulse wear them, everyone who works in his office wears them. His entire staff wears them. These are the feet of one of his assistants. And what do these shoes say? They say, hey, you know what? Don't worry about it. We can relate. Dr. Hulse introduces himself as Cameron, which says, or equals, you can trust me. There's a video game room in the lobby area at Dr. Hulse's office. And this is much more than just an activity to pass the time. This is a message to these kids. It says, I know it's boring to wait, and I know you're feeling anxious. So here's something to help with that. Here's something to take those fears and those frustrations away. Now, there are also videos of big wave surfers and extreme skateboarders in Dr. Hulse's office going all the time. They look like this. And again, this goes beyond a distraction. These videos and the skater surfer magazines, they make Dr. Hulse relatable. These things say to these kids, I know what cool is. I think it's cool too. I mean, hey, you know what? This is Southern California. This is a definition of a kid's life in Southern California. This is how you do it if you're living the dream. And Dr. Hulse, he knows that. And he explains it to these kids this way. Now, Dr. Hulse's office is also filled with beautiful souls, right? There are these 10 wonderfully kind and nurturing women, just lovely women. And here's the thing, they all dress the same way every day, not in scrubs or medical clothes, but in denim shirts and sneakers. And they're kind of like the fun but really responsible aunt that your kid just loves. And, you know, they hold these kids accountable, but they also empower them. So when Christian goes to Dr. Hulse's office, he has to sign himself in. And they ask him if he's brushed. No shame, you know, just the facts. We don't want to get in your mouth if it's stinky and dirty. And then they tell him to go on back and wait for Dr. Hulse. He knows exactly what to do, and he owns that office. There's nothing for me to do there. There's no place for parenting here. It's not required because Dr. Hulse's team takes care of that. Which says something really cool about Cameron Hulse. It says, hey kids, I know sometimes you need a hug. Sometimes you just need a really wonderful woman to guide you and to love you. And he hires women who do that. He makes sure that his team members do this for my kid and for every other kid who goes into that office. Now, there's also an ice cream cooler in the back of Dr. Hulse's office. And I think this is especially cool because most dentists say no sugar. And I get that. But Dr. Hulse, he recognizes that sometimes kids need a treat. And what does this touch point also say about how well he knows his audience? It says, you know what, I get it. It hurts. Have a little sweetness. It'll take your mind off things. It says, great job today. You deserve a break. And I'll tell you, when Christian gets his delicious treat, his fresh coconut ice cream bar or whatever he chooses that day, he eats it in front of me in the car with oohs and ahs, and he waves it in front of my face like it was a treat to get to go to the orthodontist. Like I'm the one who missed out. Christian is not 5, he's 14, but the ice cream works on him too because everybody loves a little sweetness. So here's the other thing about Dr. Hulse. He has Christian's back. And I'll tell you how this works. So one Saturday morning, it happened to be very early, and it happened to be Valentine's Day, and it happened to be right after Dr. Hulse's wife had just had a baby. And Christian broke a piece of hardware in his mouth. And Dr. Hulse had told me that if it broke, I needed to call immediately because it was an expensive piece of hardware and because it could hurt Christian if we left it in his mouth while it was broken. So I did. I didn't want to, but I did. I called at 7:30 on a Saturday morning on Valentine's Day. And, sure enough, Dr. Hulse meets us at his office. He's sunny, bright, and cheery like he always is. And it took him about an hour to fix this piece of equipment. And then he brought Christian into the waiting room. And they both knew that I was frustrated with Christian. And Dr. Hulse said, hey, listen, Mom, give him a break. He's a great kid. Things happen. Don't be so hard on him. And you know what that says? Do you know what happened with that touch point, what it accomplished? It made Christian and Cameron Hulse a team. They were complicit in knowing something that every kids know, but adults don't acknowledge very often, which is sometimes moms can be real nags. So Dr. Hulse has a handle on a very important aspect of his brand. He has a handle on his customers. He knows his customer archetype and he knows his customer characters. And these are things I talk extensively about in my online course. Dr. Hulse knows that customer and he shows that. He demonstrates it through touch points every single time these kids walk into his office. But the final touch point, Dr. Hulse's final touch point, says something that goes so far beyond everything else. So the day that Christian went in to get his braces off, we didn't know how long it would take, and Christian and I were both very excited about it. And we got into the waiting area in the office, and there were other parents in there, and they do an interesting thing. They put braces on and take braces off only a couple of days a week. And I assume that they do it so the kids who are having to get their braces put on can see the kids who are getting their braces off. And so when we went in, they had Christian go to the back like he always does. And after what I thought was a pretty short period of time, I could see all these women come out of the back of the office, and they made a tunnel down the hallway from the waiting area to the back of the office with half of them on one side and half of them on the other. And they started clapping their hands and yelling and cheering. And all of a sudden through the whole office comes this really loud music. And it's Right Said Fred's I'm Too Sexy. And they had Christian walk down the hall through the middle of this tunnel. And it was so emotional. And he was so excited and so happy. And they were screaming and cheering and yelling his name. And I can't even tell you what a sense of emotion and pride it was for this boy who started here 26 months before to end up as this young man here with Dr. Hulse. And these are all these lovely women. So, this day that he got his braces off. And then Dr. Hulse said the final touch. He said, Christian, you're a stud and you can rule the world. And he didn't say that with a touch point. He said it out loud. And you know what? Christian believes him because Dr. Hulse used all these touch points to build trust. And Christian trusts Cameron Hulse. And so does his mom. So I want you to think about this for a minute. I want you to think about how well this guy knew his customer. And I want to ask you, in your notebook or in the chat, if you know your customer. Do you understand your customer's desires and goals and fears and frustrations? And can you tell her or him that you know him or her through touch points? Is there some way that you can create moments of truth or touch points for your customer? And can you think of some right now? Because if you can, share them with us in the chat or share them with us in your notebook. So, okay, I want to take you to my next example. And I want to tell you that you can build touch points into your process and into your business model at all different points in the customer relationship. And some of the best touch points occur prior to the sale. Because if you remember what I said earlier, I said that touch points turn prospects into customers before they turn customers into fans. So I want to introduce you to Benetrends. Benetrends was a client of mine for many years. And this is a company owned by an attorney named Len Fisher. And Len is just an absolutely brilliant man. And he discovered a loophole in the tax law that allows individuals to use their 401ks and their retirement funds to invest in businesses for themselves with no penalties and no taxes. So the way it works is that they can withdraw this money. They don't withdraw, but they can use this money to buy businesses or open businesses. And this was especially valuable just following the recession when so many people were out of work and had to create their own jobs. And a lot of these people have been executives and they were older and they had saved all this money, but they couldn't get to it because of the penalties. And Len Fisher and the Benetrends product found a way for people to access this money without penalties so they could put it to work for themselves and put themselves to work. Now, Len and his team, they were in touch with a very different aspect of their brand than Cameron Hulse. Cameron Hulse was in touch with his customer archetypes and his customer characters. Benetrends was in touch with its unique benefits offer. So at Benetrends, they understood their brand proposition. They understood very clearly what they had to offer. And more specifically, they understood how it uniquely benefited their customers. They knew that it would help people become safe and secure again. They knew that people would have peace of mind. They knew that people would enjoy personal freedom when they became entrepreneurs and franchisees, and that they could enjoy the fruits of their labor by accessing their own funds. They knew that they could help people be self-sufficient and that many of them could reestablish their self-esteem that they'd lost during a layoff or something like that. So Benetrends was very in touch with this aspect of their brand. But there was a problem. Their unique benefits offer was complicated. And this might also apply in your business. So consider this if you've got a product where you really need to tell a longer story to bring your benefits to the world. So at Benetrends, they needed to talk to people to sell. They couldn't sell through a brochure or a 2-minute video or a quick phone call because this product was a disruptor, right? It disrupted the way people normally thought of 401ks and investments and the way they thought of life and business. So it was a disruptor. And sometimes you need time to explain a disruptor. So not only did they need to talk to people, but they needed to talk to busy people because it was the CPA or the financial planner or the investment house or the business planner that really needed to understand this because Len's customers were going to go to these advisors to ask if it was legal to get advice. And Len wanted the advisors to support the product. And even more so, he wanted the advisors to recommend the products. So Benetrends needed a way to tell the story simply. And we had to start with the product name and tagline. They had named the product ERSOP, ERSOP, which stood for something like Entrepreneurial Rollover Startup Operating Plan or something like this. It was so long and complicated that I've had to strike it from my memory. But we spent a lot of time in strategy and in defining what it was that the product really did and in identifying this kind of single benefit above all others that we needed to explain in a split second. And so we developed the name the Rainmaker Plan because everybody knows what a Rainmaker is. And we created the tagline, make rain with your rainy day savings. And this told people immediately how the product would be used. And it made something overwhelming much simpler to digest. And taglines and product descriptors are one of the things that we discuss in really deep detail in the online course. We go through a workshop to see how your business can tell a story really, really quickly in just a few words. And this is what we did with Benetrends. So we use these really lush, rainy photos and we juxtaposed them with financial information and step-by-step instructions and pictures of the principals and the agency. But even with a simplified story, they needed a way in. They still needed to talk to these people and they needed time to show the legalities of the product. They had tried cold calling, but it was absolutely useless. So we employed a little trick. I'm going to show you a little trick. We took a touch point that engaged the senses, and there's tons of research that supports the idea that if you engage the senses, you heighten an experience for people. You create memories, you elevate the level of communication, and you create a connection with something that lives far beyond the cerebral. So I want you to think about these things. I want you to think about the sound of a Harley Davidson, or Siri's voice, or the aroma of a Cinnabon, or the taste of juicy fruit gum, or the feeling of the inside of your Ugg boots. Now, here's the great news. You don't have to be Apple or Wrigley's or UGG to create something like this, to create this sensory sensation. And Ben and Trent's created it for about $3. This is what we did. This says make rain. If you've never seen one of these, this is a rain stick. It's a hollowed out piece of wood, and inside there are pegs along the inside of the tube, and there's rice or peas, little beads inside. And as you turn the stick very, very slowly, it perfectly imitates the sound of rain. And we found this importer of African handcrafts, and we bought thousands of these rain sticks, and they were good size too. They were about a foot and a half or 2 feet long. We didn't put logos on them or anything like that. We just bought them as gifts for the receivers. And here's what we did. Ben and Trent's made a giant list, thousands of people with whom they wanted to connect. And they wanted to create this wave of knowledge for this product, and they wanted to establish themselves as the originator. This is another thing that I talk about in the brand course. They want to be the original expert. They wanted to get out there and own the market before anybody else did. And the value in what Len offered was his expertise. But we added value with the brand because anybody could create this airsoft. Any good attorney or good accountant could create this, entrepreneurial rollover thing. But only Ben & Trent's had the official Rainmaker plan. They took it first to market. So this is kind of like if you ever had rollerblades or heard about rollerblades, you really didn't just want inline skates, right? You wanted the rollerblades. So using the rain plan, we took the rain sticks and we put them in boxes with a brochure and an invitation to speak and a little product summary, and we mailed them out to thousands of people across the country in waves. And here's what happened. First of all, the box made noise, so people opened it. And secondly, the rain stick made it to the desk of the person who really mattered. If you've ever sent out ad specialties like cups or mugs or pens or magnets, then you know that the guy you want to receive them never actually gets them. I hope you know that if you're sending those out, because the people who open his mail know that he's busy and that he gets a ton of this stuff, and they don't even pass it on. They just keep it for themselves. I've actually worked in departments and corporations where they just keep a basket of all this stuff, and if you need it, you just grab it out of the basket. But the rain stick was different. It had no logo and it was special. And the mailroom guys and the admin assistants, they thought twice about keeping it for themselves. And, they also felt kind of proud to share it, and they wanted to play with it. And it was kind of like, hey, you're never going to believe what you got in the mail today. And it intrigued people, the rain stick did. It intrigued them enough to play with it. They touched it and they heard it and they passed it around. And it created a lasting impression because they engaged, they remembered. And it also led to a desire for reciprocity, which is the practice of exchanging things with others for mutual benefit. So it's not a slimy manipulation to create reciprocity. And I want you to understand that if it's done correctly, it's a genuine and honest form of giving and receiving. It says, I bought you something, or I created something especially for you, and I want you to have it. And then in this mutually beneficial exchange, the other person says, well, thanks. I'm going to give you a moment of my time or some of my dollars or, my referral or whatever else that it is. Reciprocity is what's happening right here in this webinar, by the way. And here's the real key to creating genuine reciprocity. What you give needs to be a gift. It's not a pen with your name on it. It's not advertising. It's not for you. It's for them. It's for the receiver. And, for a gift to be a gift, the giver has to want to give it, and the receiver has to want to receive it. So, this really needs to be a beautiful and honest thing. And the rain stick, it created a really great, valuable sense of reciprocity because the entire office was having fun with it. So what do you think happened after we mailed these out? Every single person remembered and took our calls. And the touch point turned people from prospects into customers. Now, I want you to stop here and think about your brand in a couple of ways. Spend just a moment in reflection, and I want to ask you a couple of things to write down in your notebook or to share with the group. Are you in touch with the unique benefits offer of your brand? Do you know very clearly, and this is a big part of branding, how your products and services benefit your customer? And do you have the situation that Ben & Trent's had where you need the time and the permission to explain things just a little bit further? If you don't know that benefits offer, that's okay. These things take thought and they take time and they take strategy, but I assure you they're totally doable. And you don't have to be a big company to nail these aspects of your brand. In fact, you should nail these aspects of your brand regardless of what size your company is. But I want to ask you if you can think of a way that you could engage the senses too. can you kind of stop and reflect and think of a way that you can create reciprocity, or, do what Benetrends did and engage the senses? So I'm going to move through now to my third example, and this example is a company that really nailed its touch points. And this company is a little different because they exist primarily online. And this is Infusionsoft. Infusionsoft is my CRM software company, and they create the software that I use for my mailing list and to manage all of my emails and my offers. And they house the system that I use for this online branding school. And I just got to know Infusionsoft over the summer, so they're a new supplier for me. Now, Dr. Hulse knew his customer archetype, and Benetrends, they knew their unique benefits offer. But Infusionsoft, they knew something different. They had something different they wanted to put forth. They knew their key message, or key messages. Now, every business, no matter what it sells or what it creates, has some key messages it needs to bring to the world. And those key messages center around five key themes. It doesn't matter what you sell or what you create or how big you are or how small you are. They're the same 5 themes for every single business. There are messages for your benefits, your features, for your how it works, for your how people buy, and for your backstory. There are 5 things that you need to create very, very clear messaging about. And I cover this again in great detail. But what I'd like companies to know is that they need to get their stories straight. They need to write them once and then tell them the same way every single time. And so at Infusionsoft, they're very, very in touch with one of their key messages. And what they're in touch with is their how it works story. They know something. They know that if I can make the product work, I'll be successful. And my success will then equal their success. But in order to make it work for me, they had to get their story straight. They had to have a way to tell me the story. And here's how they did that. They did it through touch points. More specifically, they did it through required training. Now, that sounds a little bit strange, but let me take you all the way there. So when you buy the Infusionsoft product, they require you to buy training. That's an important thing for you to hear when you're creating your touch points. They don't give it away for free, because it costs them a lot of money to do this, but they won't sell you the product unless you learn how it works. Because unless I hear that story, I can't successfully use the product. So as soon as I started with Infusionsoft, they introduced me to the amazing Amy Dugan, and Amy was my storyteller. It was Amy's job to make sure I got the story straight, and she was absolutely stellar at her job. So the first thing Amy did was she taught us how. She taught myself and the members of our team and everyone who needed to know step by step how to use Infusionsoft. And it went like this. There were 5 weeks and there were 5 different stories, and each story was about a different aspect of how it works. And her mission was really clear. She met not just with me, but with the other members of my team. And she showed us how we could be successful, because Infusionsoft knows that the key to any business's success with their product is to get over the very first hump. They need every new business to create that first mail campaign and to work the product, work the Infusionsoft system. And they know that if a new customer doesn't do that within the first 5 weeks, they'll fail with the product. They'll drift away and they won't use it. And if I had done that, I would have been frustrated. I wouldn't have been a fan there. I wouldn't have been an ambassador for Infusionsoft if I was frustrated. But aside from telling the how it works story, Amy brought much more to the table. In the telling of the story, Amy touched me, and she touched all of the people, I think, on the Unforgettable You team. Amy was curious about me as a person, not just as a client, and she was very curious about my business. And after she told the story, she forced me to set goals. She made me a character in the how it works story. And then she told me why I would succeed at my goals. So I was very invested in the happy ending, this happy ending of this how it works story that Amy had told me that she had created for me. And she listened. She listened to my ideas and to my questions. She provided what my husband calls the what is the author really trying to tell us here part of the story. She gave it all. She gave the whole story. And Amy made a huge company seem very intimate and very personal. And every single week, I looked forward to story time with Amy. Now, I want to tell you another little trick here. I try with each one of these to give you a trick that you can use in creating your touch points. Because Amy did something that shocked me, and it shocked me in an entirely different way. And if you can do it too, you should. If you're online, go offline with your customers. It only takes a minute. Wherever you can, just go offline with your customers at least once. Because after the story was over, after Amy told me the how it works story, her key messages, I walked out to my mailbox and look what was inside. This is a handwritten note from Amy Dugan that says, Julia, I know you found your juju with branding. It has been amazing to help you with your launch using Infusionsoft. I know that your business will be successful because of your wealth of knowledge and drive to make it successful. Best regards, Amy Dugan. Now, what does this touch point say? It says, I care about you. And that's part of our story. And look at this. She went online and found this t-shirt that said, stun the earth with your good juju. And so she said, and this says, I listened to your story. I know who you are. I know what your juju's about. And, this is really an amazing touch point. Amy met me offline. And then I went online and retold her story. This is what I did. How many times do you think I retold that story? I went in every entrepreneur forum that I was in. I'm telling you right now, I told the Infusionsoft story. I repeated their story. And the thing about great stories, everybody repeats them. And if you get your story straight, people will tell your story too. Now, here's the cool thing about Infusionsoft. I had another woman that posted in an entrepreneur forum that I was in that she was ready to quit on a launch that she was in the middle of, and that what she said was, I was feeling very small because no one was responding to my launch. And guess who kept me going? Guess who made it work for me? My Infusionsoft coach. Isn't that funny? And I thought, I don't think that's funny at all, because my Infusionsoft coach was a superstar. So it's not just Amy. Infusionsoft builds these touch points into, every single customer relationship, and they train their employees to do that. And what these touch points did, this 5 weeks of key messages and this how it works story and this beautiful gift in the mail, they turned me from a customer into a loyal, raving fan. Now, I want you to think about your brand. And in the notes or in your chat box, I want you to write down whether or not your business has a story to tell. And do you know your key messages? If not, it's okay. This stuff takes time, but I want you to know that this is part of building a great brand. And I want to ask you if you think you can find a way to get your story straight, and if you can find a way to tell your story through touch points, because if you can, you will really, really take things to the next level and you will develop fans. Okay. So I want to talk about the last company here. And, this is my last example. And I want to talk to you about my new hairdresser and my experience at the salon. So I want to introduce you to Kelly Cardenas, who owns a chain of salons, and his flagship salon's in Vegas, and he opened a salon in Carlsbad, which is not far from my house, just a couple years ago. And I found the Kelly Cardenas salon online, and I made an appointment because their website was very cool. They seemed very hip and very cool. And I'm not afraid to admit that, even though I'm not getting any younger, I like to be cool too, right? Don't we all? So I took a leap and I made an appointment with a stylist, and that's a big leap. Okay. It's not easy to have someone new cut your hair, even if you're someone like me who doesn't have a lot of hair. This is service that requires trust on the part of the buyer. And I was willing to trust the Kelly Cardenas salon. At least I was willing to trust them once because of the way they presented themselves in their website. Now, Kelly Cardenas knows something altogether different. Dr. Hulse knew his customers, and Benetrends knew their unique benefits offer, and Infusionsoft, they knew their story. But Kelly Cardenas, he was in touch with something different. Kelly Cardenas knows his juju. Now, your juju is what separates you from every other business in the market. It's the thing you're absolutely number one at. And if you're saying to yourself right now, oh, come on, I'm not number one in anything. I'm a small business. How am I supposed to be number one? Then I'm here to tell you that you're not seeing this right. You're not seeing your juju right if that's the way you feel, because every single business is number one at something. Every single business. And it's this juju that's my favorite part of branding. It's the first step in my online course, and seeing businesses have this aha juju moment is just an absolute sweet spot in my career and in my life. So trust me, you do have the juju. You may just not know what it is yet. Okay. So your juju helps you answer what I call the $1 million brand question, which is, why would someone buy from my company out of all the companies in the world? Right? And Kelly Cardenas, he knows the answer to this question. He has this insight. I want you to listen what he says on his website. And by the way, this website does not say about us, even though Kelly has a chain of salons. It says about Kelly. And here's what Kelly says about himself. Kelly Cardenas is taking it upon himself and his team to give the hair industry a complete makeover. He's making over the entire industry. He is infusing the industry with excitement and professionalism. He is constantly searching for new ways to fuse the hair industry with other industries, like the music industry. Kelly's rock star status has definitely culminated over the past few years since opening his flagship salon in Las Vegas. Kelly sees the industry as his blank canvas. Now, let me ask you a question. Why would I choose Kelly Cardenas out of all the salons in the world to have my haircut? Because he's a freaking rock star, and he told me himself on his website. And you know what? I was inclined to believe him. So this is Kelly Cardenas. And before I get into the touch points he's created, I want to introduce you to one more little trick. You can create an icon because form should suggest meaning. And I'm going to explain that, okay? An icon is not just a symbol. You know, lots of companies have little widgets next to your logo and things like that. An icon tells a story in a flash, in a split second. Its form suggests a much bigger meaning, and I'll show you what I mean. Form suggests meaning. But this icon tells me a larger story in a single second. It tells me a lot more than the fact that Kelly Cardenas is a rock star, okay? What else does it tell me? What's missing from this picture, okay? What's missing from this picture? The face. Why? Because you know what makes you a rock star? Your hair. Of course, if you have the right hair, you can be a rock star too. And here's the thing about icons. They look so simple, but behind every great icon is the strategy of the juju. It's not the designer who creates the icon, and people really get that wrong. It's the strategist who creates the icon. And you, my friend, you are the strategist. You are the architect of your brand. The designer translates your strategy into a visual that communicates it, but you're the one that's going to set this up. So I want you to think about your juju, and I want you to think about an icon that might represent your juju. And I want to tell you how I experience the touch points related to Kelly Cardenas's juju, because they're really cool, okay? When I arrived at the Kelly Cardenas salon, it was about 10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, and there was super loud music playing, rock music, and the front door was open. It was a garage door, you know, just this big gaping hole in the front of the salon, and the receptionist asked me if I wanted a glass of champagne. Now, let me ask you a question. Who drinks champagne at 10 o'clock on Tuesday mornings? Rock stars and me. And then she turned me over to this assistant who escorted me through the salon. Now, the salon was one giant room. Okay, it was a garage. I didn't need an escort. I could see all the way from the front desk to the back wall. But I want to ask you a question. Who has escorts everywhere they go? Oh, rock stars. Now, along the way, this assistant, she told me about Paul Mitchell products and about the Kelly Cardenas process and how they believe that they should treat their customers. And she showed me some of their own products. And so then I want to ask you one more question. Who needs bling for their hair? Oh, rock stars. And apparently me. And then I went into this dressing room, which was really a big bathroom, but they made it into a whole lot more than that. And there were river rocks in the sink and these cool black gowns with the icon posted on them. And there was this tea tree oil soap. And when I washed my hands, these suds, you know, they went down over these rocks, and it was just this whole sensory experience. And painted all over the wall was chalkboard paint. And the customers before me and the stylists, they had written all these motivational sayings all over the wall and hell yes and all kinds of stuff. And so I want to ask you one more thing. Who can write all over the wall in their dressing rooms? Oh, rock stars. Rock stars do that. Then I went to get my hair shampooed and I got a neck massage. Right? I didn't expect that at all. Not only did she give me a full-on neck massage, which only lasted a few minutes, but it was very well done. Superb massage, by the way. She asked me how I would like my massage. Would I like it more firm, or would I like it with a softer touch? And you know who gets neck massages in a dark private room before the big show? Well, you guessed it. rock stars. Rock stars do that. So now here's where I hit real rock star status. My stylist, Kelsey, she came over and she pulled up a stool. You know how people flip those chairs around and they kind of straddle the chair with the back of the chair in front. And she didn't stand behind me and look at my hair in the mirror like most hairstylists do. She sat down, she looked me square in the eyes, and she said, "Let's talk about your hair." And, she listened, she did, but mostly she talked. And she told me she'd love to see me as a redhead. That was the first thing she told me. And she told me how she thought that she should cut my hair. And she told me to trust her. And you know what I did? I did trust her. And she told me that it was going to take a few haircuts to get where we were going with my hair. So, she and I were a team, and she had this hair plan. So, she had this long-term plan to make me hip and cool. And I'm a strategist, so I can think of nothing I would like more than a hair plan. But I want to ask you this. Who has private stylists dedicated solely to them who make them feel like the only people in the world? Oh, yeah, rock stars. So how do you think I felt when I left the Kelly Cardenas salon? I felt like a frickin' rock star. And I feel like that every time I go there. Now, here's a little trick, my friend, and it's an often overlooked but powerful, powerful trick. Send your customers fan mail, because about 2 days after my haircut, I got this in the mail. And look what it says. It's from Kelsey. "Julia, I can't tell you how much I loved getting to chat with you. I'm so excited for your new website. Thanks for allowing me to transform your look. I just know those pictures turned out beautifully. I hope your son is also enjoying his hair. Have a great week, Kelsey." Fan mail, baby, because I'm a rock star. Now, what Kelly Cardenas did is not the most expensive thing in the world. Okay, his salon is in a giant garage. I didn't go to Santa Monica Boulevard or, West Hollywood or Beverly Hills to get my haircut. I went to a residential neighborhood down the street. But what Kelly created with his touch points and his icon is just an iconic feeling, okay? And all of that comes from his juju, from his rock star juju. I'm picking up what Kelly Cardenas is putting down. And that's some good juju, man. So I want to take a couple of moments to breathe here and to have you think about your brand. I want you to go back to your notebook or the chat box and tell us some things. Okay, first of all, are you in touch with your juju? Do you know what your juju is? And can you answer that $1 million brand question? And if not, it's okay. Juju is a strategy question. We take time with the strategy. We never, ever rush the juju. But if you know what your juju is, can you find a way to make it iconic? And can you find a way to create touch points with your juju? I want you to hear about that, to think about that, okay? And I want to summarize what we talked about with the touch points. And I want to come back to the fact that these 4 brands that rock my world right here, this is not IBM or BMW or Apple. These are places in my neighborhood, for goodness sakes. You should feel entirely relieved and supported by this. So I want to summarize what you know right now about touch points. Here's what you know. Touch points are an extension of an aspect of your brand. And there are a lot of aspects to a really great brand. And touch points are one-on-one, even though you scale them. They make the person at the other end feel like the only person in the world. You need touch points before the sale, and you need touch points after the sale. And touch points are not accidental. They are very, very well engineered. And touch points are the difference between a great brand and a transformational brand. Now, in addition to that, I gave you 3 hints, 4 hints actually, little tricks. Engage the senses. If you're online, come offline. Create an icon if you can, because form suggests meaning in just seconds, and send fan mail. And I had mentioned that if you stay till the end, you'll get a bonus. I have 25 more little tricks or tips or things that you can use, specifics that you can use to create your own touch points. So touch points, I think it's clear now, are driven by a bigger brand strategy. And I want to tell you a quick story here, and it's my story. So I told you that a brand was about all of this. I told you that a great brand has position and philosophy and messaging and personality and an image and an audience. And the reason that I know that is because I've been helping big companies do this, huge corporations do this for about 26 years. So let me back up and say that I started my career on what we call the client side in my industry. I was a marketing manager and then I was a marketing executive in the financial industry. And over time, I came to realize that I really loved branding and I really loved the strategy, but I hated being an executive. So I moved on and I started my own business. And for about the last 14 years, I've been going into corporations, many of them just like the ones I used to work at, and helping them build their brands. And I do workshops and I lead executive teams and then lead creative teams to implement the strategy. And it's very, very rewarding work in terms of challenge and brain work and creativity. But after 26 years of the corporate game, I was beginning to feel a bit burnout and just kind of over it. And so about a year ago, I started to join some online forums with other small business owners and executives. And I took some classes and joined some groups so I could sort of feel my way through what I thought might be the next chapter in my career and my life. And I was spending time with these business owners and I had this aha moment when I saw their brands, when I saw them sharing their brands. I realized that the entire world of branding, everything I know from my core, has been exclusively provided for only big corporations. Smaller businesses don't know how to build brands with all of these aspects and all of this depth. At least none of the smaller businesses I know, because the process is outrageously expensive. And in order to go through the process, you have to hire a big agency or an expensive consultant. And it occurred to me that this is just wrong. This is not the way the world should work. And it occurred to me that my peers, my colleagues are not these giant corporations. My colleagues are the people who are running these small businesses just like mine. They're the people who created jobs for themselves, the people who left their soul-sucking jobs and, decided to do something different, the people with family businesses or some skill and some talent, to bring to the world. And I realized in this moment that I could teach strategy to those business owners too, that I could take everything I'd take into corporations for years, all the workshops and the strategy development and the depth and breadth, and I could scale it so small businesses could afford it. Because I've been to the $100,000 photo shoots and I've seen the $50,000 logos, but I've also seen small businesses like Benetrends and Kelly Cardenas and Cameron Hulse really nail it. So I spent the last year developing Unforgettable You. And Unforgettable You is an online do-it-yourself branding course. And in this course, I'll take you step by step through the exact same process that big corporations have paid me tens of thousands of dollars to lead on site in their offices for years. And when you're done, you'll feel about your brand the way that Nike feels, or Apple, or Bank of America. When you're done, you'll know what brand strategy really is. And what's more, you'll have one. You'll have a killer strategy. You'll have a brand that's all your own, and you'll be primed and ready to grow your business and inspire your customers. And here's what's cool. You'll be able to attract the people you want to attract. And just like I talked about here, you'll turn your prospects into buyers and you'll turn your buyers into fans. Now, I said this before, these are the exact same workshops I used for big corporation. They're proven, time-tested strategies. And I want to ask you for a minute to imagine something. I want you to imagine how different your business would look if you had a legitimate plan to validate premium pricing. So if you could justify and validate charging what you're really, really worth, because a great brand strategy is going to give that to you. Imagine if you had the strategies to present your company or your product or yourself confidently so that you could be the expert, so you could take the number one position, so you could play the game and win in the way you want to win. Imagine if your brand made money for you instead of costing you money day after day or year after year. Now, with Unforgettable You, I promise you those imaginings are going to become realities because I will take you step by step through the process of making your company unforgettable. The program has videos and downloads. It has 26 lessons just like this one that show you some kind of, start to finish process. It has advice from experts and examples of real world brands. And there's a community where you can interface with your peers and who are going through this with you, and you can share things and try things on and get feedback and see what works for you. Here's what I want you to know. You don't have to have an MBA or be the chief marketing officer at IBM to understand this stuff. You should be applying these strategies to your business. It's just that up until now, you needed to be in a position like that in order to afford this stuff. And I decided that in my aha moment that I wanted to change that. So here's what will happen. After 6 modules, you'll walk away with everything that I talked about. You'll have a killer brand position. I'm going to teach you how to find your juju. I'll teach you how to differentiate yourself from every other business in the market, how to understand your customers and their goals, desires, fears, and frustrations, how to price your offerings appropriately, and how to know your unique benefits offer like Benetrends did so you can tell it to the world. And after I do that, you can be number one. And then I'll teach you how to get in touch with the why for your brand, your higher purpose, and I'll help you develop brand values. You'll develop brand values and a long-term brand vision. And you'll even create a manifesto that you can share with the world the same way that Apple does, or Lululemon, or Red Bull, or even Oprah Winfrey. And after you do that, you can inspire consumers and you can build fans. You can build a fan base. And you'll also walk away with an absolutely clear understanding of your company's key messages. So these are your messages for your features, your benefits, your how it works, your how people buy, and the beautiful, inspiring backstory that people will want to hear and they'll want to repeat. And I'm going to help you write it one time so you never have to write these stories again. You'll literally pick these messages up and drop them in your marketing for the rest of your brand's days. And if you don't like to write, if you're afraid of writing, that's okay, because we're going to use a formula that works every single time. And if you still don't want to write it, if you still want to hire a copywriter, that's okay too, because I'm going to show you how to create the goods to give to the copywriter so that person can absolutely nail it for you. Okay, so you can make your point and people will listen and you'll turn prospects into customers. And then I'll help you build a persona for your brand, everything from your voice and tone to your color and your icons, and you'll develop very clear strategy for the way your brand should behave in the real world. And believe me, this part is so much fun. Most people don't even know this exists, and I find that they dive into this and they have just a blast. And once you have that personality, your brand will be consistent and it'll be intriguing and it'll be charming and attractive, and people want to hang out with it because it has charisma. Okay, and then we'll take all these things and we'll develop a creative brief, and you can present it to a designer who will make these things come to life. Okay, and then when it's all in place, when your brand is a well-oiled machine, when it's ripe for converting people, I'll help you craft your touch points like these 4 companies did, and you will go from irresistible to unforgettable. So there's so much stuff in this course, and I've created a website so you can see every single piece of what you'll get. But here's the best part, and I feel really proud of this, and I feel really inspired by the fact that I can bring this to businesses of any size now. And I've seen big corporations pay tens of thousands of dollars for this, but I'm selling the whole thing for $499 if you pay in advance, or 2 payments of $277 each. So, this course represents hundreds of hours of my work and my time. And there were 10 other people who dedicated tons of hours of time to this. And I feel really confident that what you're getting is an absolute boon for this price. But when I was developing the course and I was working with a target group of small business owners, I had some of them say, Juju, I don't really want to do this without you, right? I don't want to find my Juju without Juju. And so I've built in an option for that too. If you would like to take the course with me alongside you as a coach, you can choose that option as well. But I can only do that for a small number of people and give everybody the attention they deserve. So I'm going to take 25 people in a special program called Unforgettable You Plus Live Juju. And in this program, you'll get one-on-one coaching. We'll have 3 45-minute phone calls together, and you'll have unlimited access to me via email as you complete the course. And when you're done, I'll do a complete review of all your materials, and I'll give you my input and I'll give you my feedback as a brand strategist. And if you want to do the live Juju version, it's $19.99 if you pay in advance, or 2 payments of $10.99. And there's only 25 people that I'm going to admit into that group. Now, enrollment for the course closes in 5 days. And the reason for this is that I really want to do this in a group environment. I want you to go through this course with a group of your peers. So I'm only going to keep enrollment open for 5 days. And you can see all of it. You can see every single bit of it at unforgettableyou.com. It's up now and you can look at it. And if you have specific questions and after you read it, or now if you want to talk to somebody, I have Michael and Danny here. I put these phone numbers up on the screen, but when the slide's gone, the slide will be gone. So if you want to talk to someone, write these numbers down. So you can send us an email at support@unforgettableyou.com, or you have these numbers, and everything that you need is there. And I just want to take a second and say thank you. And I want to tell you that I'm really grateful and I'm really humbled and I'm truly appreciative that you have taken a chance and given me an hour out of your day, because I know your time is every bit as valuable as mine. And I'm really honored that you chose to share this with me. And after this, you'll receive an email um, from my company with a link to the download that I promised, with the 25 ideas for creating touch points for your brand. And it's time now. It's time for your business to be unforgettable. So have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.